What's splashin'? Welcome to season 9, episode 3 of Siren Sundays with me, your host, Lashanti the Siren. Today's guest is Dr. Ancilleno Davis, who is the assistant professor at University of the Bahamas in the environmental sciences. And I love that you ran and put on your hat. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you so much, Shanti. It's great to be back, and it's great to be in this new position to share with you today about what's splashing in the environmental science field at UB and at UB North in particular.
Right, and I know we were talking a bit about it behind the scenes before the start of the show. I think you are definitely the most visited guest of Siren Sundays, or most appeared guest, and I'm so thrilled to always have you on because you're always full of information and full of science and perspective.
Most definitely, thank you so much, and really that's what it's about for me, and that's what I'm sharing with the students up here at UB North. There's a lot of perspective that we don't have in our educational system. A lot of students, even in this day and age, have never really seen a Bahamian environmental scientist, or they don't really know what Bahamian environmental science is, although they might have some exposure to environmental science generally in high school.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, just for the sake of any guest who's watching live who's never met you before, can you give us a brief introduction of who is Dr. Ancilleno Davis?
All right, I'm just going to check my notes.
He's funny.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's a big part of who I am, actually, is like dad jokes and bad jokes. I'm Bahamian, born and raised in Nassau, and I have my wife and 2 kids are here with me in Freeport. So yeah, that's I'm definitely a family man. I've always been interested in science from when I was a young kid. My mom worked at the Royal Botanical Gardens, and we would spend a lot of time there. And after I did my associate's degree at College of the Bahamas, I started on the Kirtland's Warbler Research and Training Program and got my first opportunity to actually work with real scientists. So we're in the bush and we're getting data and like lots of data entry, wildlife handling, and seeing that like people actually get paid for this stuff. And I was a big fan of like Bill Nye and Steve Irwin and stuff like that. And now a lot of people would say, like, oh, you like the Bahamian Steve Irwin crocodile hunter, right? And I'm like, no, I'm your Dr. Ancilleno Davis. And when you see someone else, you can say, oh, you like the American Dr. Leno, right? Yes. D'Angelo Reed is saying, shout out to the Topham Bay Warbler crew. And yes, that was us back in the day on Eleuthera. It's been a long time coming. I have my master's and PhD degrees. I have a mini MBA. I did certificates in like advanced studio art, applied statistics, and college teaching. And so all of it kind of like just brings my world together, but it's almost always environmental science.
I love that. And I know that you had mentioned at the start, you've been able to come on the show with every switch in your position. So can you give us just almost like a brief summary of your career path, like that has brought you to this assistant professor at UB?
Yeah, so those first, like not really internships, but kind of like entry-level jobs on the Kirtland's project, and then as an assistant on the Abaco Parrot project, put me into the position to go and do my my bachelor's and then master's degrees. But I got a scholarship for my bachelor's and a fellowship for my master's. Then I came back home and there weren't any jobs. And so I ended up vacuuming sea lion poop and training dolphins at the Atlantis. And then I joined the Nature Conservancy as the coordinator for the Blue Project. I worked there for a few years and joined a bunch of committees, like the College of the Bahamas Job Placement and Career Advancement Committee, National Coastal Awareness Committee, National Biodiversity Subcommittee. But then I got the opportunity to go off and do my PhD through Beings, which I founded. I founded Beings in 2009.
What does being stand for?
Beings is Bahamians educated in natural and geospatial sciences, and really it came out of my acknowledgement that we weren't connecting Bahamian students with the opportunities in science that they needed. And we've been like connecting Bahamians ever since. And I think most of the really powerful actors in conservation in the Bahamas are involved in there. You being one of them, and it's a pretty powerful network. Did my PhD and returned, and I worked. I started Science and Perspective. I worked for Israel Aid, doing some of that recovery work after Hurricane Dorian on Abaco and Grand Bahama. And so now, like, coming back to Grand Bahama after working here for different reasons. I also was at the Bahamas National Trust as the senior scientist and policy analyst. And all of these things have actually been like stages that I always wanted to see behind the scenes for, the Nature Conservancy is an international nonprofit. Birds Caribbean, I sat on their board of directors. It's a regional nonprofit working across languages. Mm-hmm. The Bahamas National Trust is our oldest conservation agency, basically, in the Bahamas, and being able to be inside and see it. And now I'm inside UB with all knowledge, right? So it's really cool to be able to leverage all of that and all the relationships that we've made along the way.
I love that you just mentioned languages, because you do speak. I know too, right?
Yes. I speak English and Spanish fluently, and then I do a little bit of sign language, and I can read French, but mostly like scientific papers. I'm not like super hardcore or anything like that.
But you can do the scientific papers in Spanish, hardcore.
Yeah. Yeah. So with the science, a lot of times the language of math is universal. So I can get what I need from the writing, and then inside their math and stuff, I can really dig down.
Yeah. I know you mentioned when you were talking about your educational journey that you had gotten a scholarship for your bachelor's, but a fellowship for your master's. And for some of our viewers, even a little bit for me, because I never was aware of the distinct differences between those two. And I know this episode is about University of the Bahamas, but can you tell me a bit about what's that difference between having a fellowship and a scholarship?
And actually, that's some of the things that I want to talk about, right?
Look at me.
And yeah, because now being in this academic arena, a lot of people don't understand these things.
Yeah.
So when you get a scholarship, you get paid to be a scholar. So you get paid to study. Mm-hmm. And you can get a merit-based scholarship, and that's saying like, oh, you smart. Let's pay you so that you could keep focusing on being smart, right? Or you might have merits in some other area. Like, wow, this kid is really great at basketball, but we want him to also get his business degree so he could handle all that money he makes from basketball. So you get, you have your scholarship based on that. You also have needs-based scholarships. So your need-based scholarship would say like, your family ain't millionaires and education can be expensive, but having a bunch of like not intelligent people in your country is more expensive. So let's make sure that all the people who need it and actually want to study have that opportunity. So then you have needs-based scholarships. And that eliminates barriers from a lot of people who have amazing talent, but just have not had access in the past. Right. A fellowship is when you're a fellow, that means that you're also contributing something to the research or the academia, right? So if you have a fellowship, that's more along the lines of we're actually paying you for your academic work. So my fellowship for my master's, I did remote sensing and precision agriculture. I built drones and I flew some drones with NASA up in Virginia and stuff like that. Basically we would fly these like $50,000 helicopters over the fields and use camera images to say if the soil was sick or healthy. And then they would have little like mapped out lines to say, okay, give this patch of field a little more water, give this patch a little less. Instead of what we do is just you throw fertilizer on the whole thing, water on the whole thing, and you can actually save a lot of money, but also get a lot better produce if you do the precision agriculture.
Nice.
So that's a fellowship. And then you have like grants where someone says, we believe you could do something cool. We will just give you this money, right? That's the money that we're giving you. And we expect you to write back to us after you finish using the money and say, this is the cool stuff that I did. And then you have loans. And so you can also get an educational loan where we're lending you this money. We're expecting you to use it for this particular reason and give it back to us because we're going to make you better able to actually pay us back. So if you get an educational loan with that education, now you can make money and you can eventually pay us back.
I think some places they have that where it's a loan, but more so you are committed to working. I think the government does that. After they pay for your education, you're committed to working there for X number of years. Like you are legally bound to do that. And I know that's also another one, which is more preferred than owing money. I mean, I don't know, but that's how I see it. But yeah.
Yeah, and in the Bahamas, almost all the scholarships that come through the government of the Bahamas have a return to work clause. So, and a lot of people don't understand what that means, but really it means that you have to contribute to nation building. And for some people, at the end of the day, you don't actually have to return to the Bahamas if you're not like physically in body. But you may then develop a program where you are encouraging Bahamians to go off to university. And that might actually be more valuable to the Bahamas. Or maybe you're creating some type of educational material or something. And so sometimes there are ways that you may not actually physically return, but still meet that need and that requirement.
Awesome. Thanks for that. We didn't expect to talk about that, but it was a really important segue back to just university in general. And, COB, which is now the University of the Bahamas, does have a location in Freeport, which I had no idea about my entire time. I don't know if this is new, but can you tell us about UB North? Like, what is that?
So UB North has actually been around for a while, but unfortunately, I mean, I think it really came to fruition just before like major like hurricane impacts and stuff like that. And you have like Hurricane Matthew, I guess that was like 2016 or 2017. And then so you put a lot of investment into this space, whereas Freeport is the second city and you want to create a magnet campus and also to kind of empower this city so that the students who are here don't have to leave and go to New Providence to finish up their degree. Right. There's a lot to be said for how that improves the stability in a community or an economy by having their education be local. It also gives you the opportunity to integrate with so much amazing industry that's here in Freeport. Like this shipping port that they have here. Carnival is about to do an opening ceremony next week, and I think they're gonna have their first cruises in 2025. So now, if you have a student coming in this semester, you have kind of 2 years to say you do your first 2 years, and now you're doing internships. You can be doing internships at some place like Carnival, right? Things like that were the kind of the driving force behind making UB North a thing. Unfortunately, then you have Hurricane Dorian, which really like wiped out UB North. And being here, I can still feel some of the underlying emotion and trauma in the people that I work with. the building that the East Campus building that I work in as often as I can. I go down there and I'm cleaning up stuff that have been there since Hurricane Dorian. And, it's been 4 years. And so I'm cleaning up the space and thinking about, how do we make this space not only useful now for me to get some students in there soon, and for community members to visit, but also how do I make it sustainable for the future so that the next hurricane that comes through, we don't have to worry about the same impacts.
Yeah.
Or if we have the similar impacts, we recover faster. Mm-hmm. But also, how do I pay homage and respect to the impacts that have happened and kind of acknowledge people's feelings around it, and also their desire to have this place revived again. And the community here, they're so excited. When I tell random people, oh yeah, I'm the new professor of environmental science, and we're getting the East Campus set up again, they're like, oh, we're so glad to have you here, so glad you're back. And it is really endearing to see that and to feel that inside the community.
So, and I'm glad you ended with that, because I do want to ask, so what is your new role there, and what does being the assistant professor of environmental science entail?
So in tenure, there's like you became an adjunct professor. So that means that you can be like hired and potentially fired or dismissed, or you can teach sometimes and then not teach sometimes. As a professor, a tenure track professor, I'm an assistant professor, then there's associate professor, then there's full professorship. Usually full professors, like you have to do something super dastardly for you to get fired. Right. But in that time, you get like evaluations to say, how much have you contributed to teaching? How much research have you done? How much have you connected the university to resources, funding, the community? And so every 3 years, you get those evaluations now that the university is going for accreditation and stuff, right? My responsibility as primarily teaching faculty is I'm supposed to teach 12 credit hours a semester. If I'm not teaching a full 12 credit hours, that means that I have to supplement with other service to the university or other work. Excuse me. So that could be me leading research or bringing in funding and grants. Maybe I'd be sitting on university committees. Maybe we have like a new environmental science, sustainability group or something like that for the university, something like that. And just engaging with the broader community. And so this semester I'm teaching one class, which is, and it's biology 109 for non-science majors. And so for all my students that are watching this, I hope you're ready for that midterm next week. But definitely, I'm super excited to be here and to be teaching these students. And I'm going to be contributing with a team to making the environmental science program and the marine science master's program. And so being able to deliver those programs in country is going to be a game changer for our nation. And also, I think me being on the team with the backing of the Beings Group, knowing what do we want in an environmental science graduate, that is going to be so crucial to the development of this program. And knowing that, I've seen what we've been lacking, and I've seen which students, which workers and volunteers were the best, and being able to say, that's the kind of skill that I want or need in a graduate. And I want them to walk across that stage, get their diploma, and have like 5 organizations on the other side, like, okay, this is your application. We want you to come and work for us.
I love that vision. I think that I support it, of course, and I'm sure myself and a lot of other beings, as you said, do. And I wondered because I know back in my day, and I say that, but maybe I'm not as old as people think that I am, but I don't remember there being, an environmental sciences program, a marine science program. So can you talk to us a bit about like the past, present, and the future of this environmental science program? So you touched on the future, but
Mm.
what was it that made that shift to now have one?
So there's always been elements of environmental science at UB, and I studied at UB, and I took an environmental science course with Lionel Johnson back then, and we went over to the Gerace Field Station, which is part of the UB
Yeah.
network, right? And then like I took my first marine biology class was with Jackie Chisholm. And if you do marine science at UB, or if you go in the water with UB, you know who Miss Chisholm is, right? Um, and it's been really cool to reconnect with a lot of my professors. But over time, especially like after UB became UB,
Hmm.
we went from everyone taking biology with chemistry, because
Yes.
if you went to COB and you were interested in the science in any way, it would be biology with chemistry was your option. And then now we're saying no, we need these degrees like small island sustainability and environmental science. Small island sustainability is very broad and more generalized, and there's a lot to be said for that program, right? Sustainability in our nation needs to be at the core of everything that we're doing.
Yeah. Agreed.
Um, but at the same time, for those students who are super interested in something like conch and lobster, or forestry, or environmental pollution, the oil industry and its effect on our country. Excuse me. That these people, they need a degree that's really like hardcore science. And also, we acknowledge that in the Bahamas, we have tons of actors coming in all the time who want to do research in the Bahamas,
Right.
but they're asked to source a Bahamian student, and then they regularly say, "Oh, we couldn't find anyone that meets our needs." You have a student who's interested in marine biology that doesn't know how to scuba dive,
Yep. Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
You have a student who wants to help with some analysis and stuff like that, but they don't know how to operate a microscope, or they don't know how to enter data properly with a standard in a data sheet or something like that. And we have to work on those things. And so this environmental science program is something that we've been looking for. The new legislation, so over the past few years, we have put out tons of environmental legislation in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
So now
We've been.
we need to be able to meet that need from in the country, and UB has acknowledged that and started setting these up. But things take time to develop, and I think we need more advisement from the external environmental industry,
Yeah.
government, nonprofit sector, and independent professionals who can say, this is a gap that's missing, or this is what we always have to fill with someone from a foreign country.
Right.
And now we can start generating those students in that capacity in country.
Yeah. And as we talked about prior to this episode beginning, I really am excited for that. I think that could be, like you said, such a game changer for students at UB, but also just for research in our country. If we can start building that capacity in these students to just understand these basic basic research skills. And I say basic, but really basic to us because, we've been doing it so long, but obviously it's just been this gap for so long. Because I laughed to myself when you said, you have students who are interested in studying marine biology or are studying it and they're not scuba certified. And I mean, I started UB, I had to do biochem and I dropped out after a year. And eventually when I went off, I pursued this marine bio degree. And one of the first questions was, you're not scuba certified yet? I didn't get scuba certified until maybe like 3 years after I graduated with a marine bio degree. And to be fair, I think it worked out for me because I quickly found my interest was more on land, talking to
Uh,
people. But I think, I could have had so many opportunities if I did have just a simple certification that could have taken me so far into the depths of the ocean that maybe I don't know, maybe my path would have been different. And that's not to say that I'm not happy with the path I'm on now, but there may be a student out there who would miss an opportunity simply because they were not scuba certified. And I know even lately we've been seeing a lot of the NGOs like TNC and PIMS start to sponsor students to get scuba certified. And I'm so thrilled to see that happening. So I'm excited. I definitely think a new wave is coming for research in the Bahamas.
yeah, I distinctly remember my first semester at COB.
Hmm.
I was in an English class, and this guy in the English class, he was just like, "There's this opportunity to get your scuba certification for $50." And I was like, if I could get out there, I'll do it. It was at Stewart's Cove, and I used to live in Winton. So like getting out there was a huge pain, and I used to have to hitch a ride,
I'm gonna
for
say.
these 8 o'clock in the morning dives and stuff like that. But that scuba certification, that $50 is absolutely the best $50 I've ever spent in my life, and is what has me here, right?
Yeah.
Right? All of that other stuff that just came up because like, oh, this dude has a scuba certification. Let's hire him for the Blue Project. Let him do all of these like crazy weird things. Um, Taking me around the world
Yeah,
for $50. That sounds like that would be a good movie or a book or something.
definitely.
Um,
I know I
yeah,
paid 300 and that was on sale. Like there was a special that was happening and I ended up paying 300 at Bahama Divers. Rest in peace, Bahama Divers. Um,
um,
and to me, I definitely think that did open up so many doors so quickly for me that I had no idea were even closed to me. Like I got to go on a research expedition to Key Sal. Like how many Bahamians can actually say they've been to Key Sal to count conch and measure conch? Like you see fields of conch. Like I've
yeah,
I've never seen fields of conch underwater, obviously, in my life, and all because I got that $300, and I got scuba certified. So I do think all Bahamians should really look into getting skills like that because it's just you never know when you need it. So you never know how
yeah.
far it'll take you.
And making these types of opportunities available more broadly
Yes.
is part of the reason that I feel that I'm here.
Hmm.
So now we think of some of the students like the Global Reef Expedition, that trip out to the Keysal Bank to do that research, and being able to bring students with me like Alex Henderson, Alana Velicott, that then go on to do all these amazing things. Like Alana's like Mrs. Worldwide, like underwater mermaid,
Yeah.
right?
And Alex
Um,
is director at Tropic Seafood now in aquaculture.
right. And even if they didn't continue being like agri specialists and doing underwater marine surveys for the rest of their lives, knowing that they had that opportunity to be on that boat, a boat owned by like the ninth richest person in Saudi Arabia or something like that,
Yeah.
who's just like, hey, let's go around the world and save all the corals, and getting to experience that and working with other researchers. If they had never had that experience, I kind of wonder like where they would be now and if their passion would have still taken them
Hmm.
there. And then I know like some of the things, like if I never met Eric Carey and he wasn't like, you need something better to do with your life and send me in the bush with the Kirtlands, like where would I be, and what kind of like nonsense would I be getting into right now?
Right.
So I want all the students that I interact with to know that hey, everything you do has something to do with science, and in the Bahamas, it's going to affect our environment. So if you're a law student, I want you to go and check out this environmental law workshop, right? If you're a computer programming student, look at all of this beautiful eBird and Agra data. Like, isn't that super cool? Come do some satellite data requisitions with me. And the students are like, that's a thing, right? I have a computer science student now who loves scuba diving, and I'm like, you don't have to separate the two. And that like blew his mind.
I love that. Yeah, I think I always like to tell people, yeah, I love talking and I love conservation. And now look at me. I get to talk about conservation on a show with all of these viewers. So yeah, I think it's important to never discourage students, especially in that spongy years of life when they're just finishing high school and entering university, and just letting them know that you don't have to take the same straight and narrow path that's laid out in these books. You could be the next book, you could be the next innovator, the next person. And I know when you were talking about scuba diving, it's a point that I just really want to stick, and we can just leave it there, but we may or may not dive into it. I think one of the things that we should definitely just start doing, and I say this all the time, the first and foremost is we need to get more people swimming. I think so many Bahamians are disconnected from the environment and from the ocean, which basically is our environment, simply because they fear it, because they cannot swim in it. And I think for me, one of my favorite ways to just kind of decompress and de-stress is literally to float in the ocean. And I think there's so many people are robbed of that opportunity because of more or less irrational fear. I mean, some people's fears are very, very rational, but I think if we could just start a swimming program nationally, I think that would also just be this like monumental game changer for students in the Bahamas. So,
And let's actually go down that path. I want to definitely send a major shout out to the education people in the environment. The Discovery Club from the Bahamas National Trust, which unfortunately has recently been discontinued, but the amount of children that they put in the ocean with a snorkel mask on, that there's no other like comparison, right? All of those kids that they put in, except for Brief. Now, Brief, if there's a group that has put kids and adults into the ocean so they can get a better appreciation, it's probably going to be Brief. The Blue Lagoon Island, their Project Beach, they actually, although they're a commercial entity, they've brought hundreds of thousands of kids over to that island over the years to experience not just the water and the fun day, right? But to actually get to touch dolphins and be exposed to like accurate biological information about the animals and their marine environment, and the amount of conservationists that used to work there. I think you and me included, right?
yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Blue Lagoon has touched lots of lives. And then I've had the opportunity to teach the Brief teacher training workshop in the past.
Nice.
And just like you say, people who've been afraid so much for their entire lives getting to teach a 50-year-old in-service teacher how to snorkel for the first time, and going from them being afraid to put their face in the water at the beginning of that experience, and then at the end of 2 weeks you have a class full of adults who had not snorkeled before, but now they're a mile away from the coast over a 40-foot deep reef, and they are snorkeling. They're feeling safe.
Yeah.
And they're feeling safe enough about being there that they're able to ask questions about what they're seeing and enthusiastically talk about what they're seeing. That's when you reach a totally different level. And then when you come back and they're all calling you and emailing you and like, hey, how do we get our students out there and stuff like that? That's just what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Changing that mentality in the Bahamas. And we have education students. We have science education students at UB and at UB North. So I don't see how we as an island nation could have science and biology students who cannot deliver a science program that's talking about coral and conch and lobster and grouper. Forget about kangaroos and elephants and stuff like that, right? And the only way you could teach about that genuinely is if you actually saw that in the wild yourself. I want them to see those old photocopies and be like, no, this isn't what a grouper looked like. Listen, check out this GoPro video that I took from when I went snorkeling with Lashanti and Dr. Lino. And, and it's available for you to look at as much as you want on the Conservation Connection database, all right? So these types of things, I think, are really important.
Definitely. And I love how our conversation's been flowing so nicely through all of the questions that I sent you in advance, because now I'm interested in hearing, well, what are the types of projects that are underway that you're working on outside of this program?
Yes. So one of the first things is that I feel we need to integrate it into sustainability, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm always thinking about, what do Bahamians really need to know about? Like our conch, right? Over the year, how much do you want to shell out for conch? So back in the day, a conch salad used to be like $5.
I actually remember that as a child.
Right.
And then it was 10, and now it's like 14, like what?
Yeah, $20 in some place. Don't let them add mayonnaise. That's like $25. Oh, right. So now, why don't we have that? Why don't we have this environmental science element integrated in all of our programming? Why don't we have place-based education in everything? And so here, like I said, everywhere I go, now that I'm in Freeport, and people are like, oh, you that guy from the TV, or you the guy from that YouTube video with a snake in your hand or something. Yeah. And I'm like, well, now I'm your guy from Freeport because I'm the new environmental science professor. I'll say, let's talk about your landscaping company, right? What types of plants are you growing there? How can we get our students to help you with that data? How can we maybe use your property to grow native plants? If you already have a whole landscape and nursery there, like you have all the infrastructure and stuff, maybe we can pay you some rent or something like that. But maybe we can generate really good students who can work in your industry, but also really good citizens who then contribute to the development of the Bahamas after that. Right? Yeah. I am helping to do some remediation for Hurricane Dorian impacts, and that includes things like developing the nursery and stuff like that. Just integrating not just the economic, but also the social and the environmental. So things like standards, for example. Unfortunately, lots of Bahamians have no idea about our environmental standards. Even in our environmental impact assessments, you don't really have key reporting standards.
Right.
So, for example, one of the things that I regularly, if you see me on an environmental impact assessment town hall, one of the things that I call people out on are numbers. And if you're reporting certain numbers as a part of your development or something like that, I'll call people out and say, your property, your environmental awareness and the area that you're conserving, why are you including the wetlands in that? Because that mangrove wetland, that couldn't be a part of your property, right? And like actually doing those numbers and saying like you couldn't have purchased that mangrove because that's still a wetland. Or saying your numbers only add up to the footprint of your building, but you haven't taken into account any of the pathways, which a pathway that's, 6 feet wide by 10 feet long, that's already 60 square feet, right? So you can actually accumulate a lot of area impacted just from a mile of pathways. So these types of things we don't have in our environmental legislation, and it's something that we can start talking about and that we can start educating people about. I also have the opportunity to teach students that are not enrolled as full-time students at UB. So what that means is that now, as I'm developing my classes, I'm asking for like placeholders where I say, if I have a 25 student max, how about I have 20 students from UB enrolled and we save 5 spaces for adult learners or business leaders who now I have a GIS class that inside that GIS class, now you have someone from like water keepers, Bahamas, who they're going all around the country getting this data on water, but maybe they already have their degree, so they don't need to come back for a whole degree.
Yeah.
But the GIS class to map where this water is and where the water is good and where it's not necessarily so good. Now they have that knowledge to integrate into their work. So that's really, I think that's really cool to be able to do stuff like that. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg, right? But I really want to get more students engaged in these conversations, sit on some of the committees that I'm on. We have a lot of policy related work that's going to be coming up.
Nice.
And unfortunately, in the Bahamas, a lot of our policy makers are not very informed or knowledgeable about the actual practical essence of conservation or environmental science. And those things, sometimes they come into conflict because of that, right? And so sure that I would be happy if I could look in the next, 10, 15 years and say, maybe 10% of the MPs that are, like elected have taken an environmental science class through UB that we've had some contribution to, right?
Or even if they are involved with the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources, that they get this sort of basics training in it, or even just simply, I think it was Canada that their health minister was a doctor, which I think we've got that down, but they also had an environmentalist be their environmental minister. Like, you actually put people who have the history and background in these areas over the areas for the country, because who better than that, like who better than an environmentalist to be a minister of environment, so maybe that'll be you one day.
Yeah. And that's one of my personal challenges, right? I've had the opportunity to work with lots of environmental scientists who have been working in the Bahamas for decades.
Yeah.
And I always ask myself, if I was in their position, how long would it take me to actually generate another PhD that could do what I do or better? And it's a sad, for me, it has always been a sad and confusing state to see how many of them have made their career working in the Bahamas. And they've hung their hat on their ability to study and lead scientific work, research, restoration, conservation in the Bahamas. But then at the end of the day, they don't have someone else that comes along and says, you know what, if it wasn't for my work with this person, I would not be here today. And now when they retire, when they pass away, when they move to another country, I will be able to continue that work.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think that's where I want to be. And shout out right now to all the people who've contributed to my development to this point.
Yeah.
Mommy, of course, my siblings who always like rib me for being in the bush and wanted to study all the time, but always are very supportive. Dr. Jeffrey Lynn, who is like my first mentor in science. He gave me tons of science books and answered a million questions. Eric Carey, of course, Eleanor Phillips and Felicity Burrows from the Nature Conservancy. Their leadership really showed me how to be fair and firm, but also like they carry their passion with them, and they delivered on that, the respect for the environment that they have. But we're always supportive of younger people who wanted to be engaged. And so I always tell people, like, if you could work with someone in the environmental sector, let it be Eleanor or Felicity Burrows. And so wherever Felicity is, and definitely the crew at the Bahamas National Trust that I worked with over these past few years, they're amazingly passionate individuals. Lakeisha Anderson, I knew her from before her BNT time. Fallon Cartwright, Lindy, most definitely, he's my dive buddy back in the day. But yeah, and all the younger folk like Jenny Morris, DeMonica, Giselle, Scott, and Bradley, and they're showing me that, you know, we're not lost. A lot of people are, you know, a lot of people feel jaded and stuff like that, but there's so much young, really good energy in the environment right now, and I'm looking forward to where it takes us over these next 20 years, our next 50 years as a country, right?
Right. And I love that you answered one of these questions already, so I don't have to ask you that later. But I know we do have one question that is actually my next question from Ashante Russell, who's actually first guest of the season. Yes, please tell us about these opportunities is what she was referring to, but how can students become involved? So if you don't have a student, obviously, in your class, how can students, citizens, how can anyone get involved in some of these projects that you're doing? And I know you noted that, you know, getting students on these committees, how can they do that?
Okay, so one of the committees that I sit on is the technical committee 14 for environmental protection and management under the Bahamas Bureau of Standards and Quality. And actually, any stakeholder can be a part of these standards committees. And so for the environment, things like, you know, how do you actually measure the weight of fish or conch? How do you measure your geospatial data? And they have technical committees for these different things. And you can make a technical committee if it doesn't exist, right? When you go to the gas station and you see those little stickers on the fuel pumps, they say it was inspected by the BBSQ. And so everyone needs to sell the same gallon, right? If a gallon is smaller here than over there, someone's fooling someone, right?
Oh, you meant the price, because I was about to say.
No, the price could be different, but if you go to some place and you ask for 5 gallons of gas, you need to get 5 gallons of gas.
Which is so funny, right? Because in the Bahamas, we don't ask by gallon. We just say amount. Whereas I find other places, they say a gallon or 2 liters or, you know, but anyway, that's a whole other.
Yeah, that's a different thing. But those are things that you might not think about.
Right.
But a lot of our students aren't thinking about this. I want our students to start going out to these meetings. So you have your environmental impact assessment, environmental management plan, town hall meetings. There are things going on, you know, in New Providence, out in Adelaide and stuff like that. You know, go and look for when these things are happening.
Yeah, they're all in the paper. That's how they get you. The youth don't check the papers, but I think there should always be somebody who posts these things. And I think some people do it on WhatsApp, but like onto Facebook in the Beans group, because I think a lot of young people who want to be involved don't read the newspaper. I don't even read the newspaper, you know? So I think that is actually a wonderful idea, because in going to these town hall meetings and going to these EIA announcements, you could definitely meet relevant government agencies. You can definitely meet these project managers and directors, but you can also meet other environmentalists who are working in these areas. And that could be an opportunity just to network, to just gain more knowledge, but also you could get an internship, you could get a job. Like, you never know what could happen when you just put yourself out there.
but most importantly, you could just learn something new, because I guarantee you, most of the people that are in your class today, most of the people that are on Facebook right now, they don't know about some development that's on their island,
Yeah. No.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't know about something that's being offered, some opportunity or something like that. And just by going into science, you can learn
Is it me? Did we lose me or did we lose Dr. Davis?
hear you. I
Hello?
can see you again now.
Oh,
Can you see me?
oh, you froze. I don't know what happened on my end, but you froze on my end. What happened to your end?
All right. So, I mean, it could be anything, right?
I know we're both in the Bahamas. It could be anyone, but sorry. So
Yeah.
can you start again? There could be things happening on their island and they're not aware of. That's the last thing I grabbed.
Yeah. So people are just not aware of things that are happening on their own island. But just by that learning, you could hear one of us scientists go off on the numbers, what the standards are, things like that. And all of that would be really good for them, just for their own personal edification. But then they get to carry that on with them into the rest of their work or whatever they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we are coming up on 52 minutes, but I do have, well, you answered the question about who inspires you. So I'm happy to hear there are so many people who are still currently working in the sector that do. Did you have another name to add, or we can move on to your final thoughts?
Really, there are so many of you all now, including you, Lashanti. Like I like we talked about this a little bit before,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like you have your passion for communication, and you're using that as your platform. Melissa Ingram, who is our Miss Bahamas Universe, yeah, our queen, and she is an actively working environmental practitioner.
A hard working one.
Right. And she is passionate, and she's really an amazing professional, but she's also using that as her platform on the road to Miss Universe this year, right? And so I really like that you guys are using what your passions are with your environmental science and showing everyone that this is actually doable. We also have people like Mermaid Lindsay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who, yeah, she wanted to be a mermaid, and she's inspiring a whole generation of Bahamian mermaids. And this is something, and mermen. And this is something that you have people who are interested in environmental science, and they want to do things like this, and you can reach out and touch and inspire young people by bedazzling your face and stuff like that. And I think that is awesome. That is crazy cool, the ways that you all are doing these things with your own separate passions.
Yes, and you know what? We almost did a disservice. We have to talk about Tanoia Thompson. We have to talk about it. We have to talk about Triple B. How could we
Yeah.
forget? Please
Yes.
tell us what Triple B is. And who is
So
Thompson? Who's
I met Tanoia Thompson at graduation from Miami University in Oxford, Ohio.
okay?
And everyone, you up there, and they're like, "Oh, you Bahamian, you must know Tanoia." And I'm like, "No, I don't know who you're talking about." And they're like, "You have to meet Tanoia."
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, there were like dozens of people who were like, "Have you met Tanoia yet? Have you met Tanoia yet?" And we met literally as we were both graduating from Miami University. And we said, "You know what? We have to do something together." And we stayed in touch, and we put together Bahamians, Birds, and Botany. And we use this, in place learning model, where the students from the place learn about their own systems, and taught them about the birds. We taught them about the plants, and we brought in environmental practitioners from the Bahamas, Delrico Barnaby, Jenny Morris, Misha Lockhart, Renique, and got them to see, wait, we can do this? Like, a Black Bahamian boy or girl could go and get paid to like snorkel and scuba dive and be in the bush and stuff like that. And we had 10 students last year. And I'll be honest with you, not everybody want to be in the bush all the time, but they had a great time and it was a learning experience that they all got something from. And sometimes it's good to learn what you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But all of those students then also got this conservation leadership experience that Tanoya is a master at, like delivering that for youth.
Yeah.
And just inspiring them. And we have our students doing internships, and they welcomed students from the Cincinnati Zoo down to the Bahamas. And our students went up to the Cincinnati Zoo this past summer. Awesome. And that exchange then catalyzed even more interactions. And our students are like at UB now or going off to school and things like that. But they have this environmental science and conservation leadership inside them. Mm-hmm. They all have eBird accounts. Some of them are like just skyrocketing in the eBird data. And so it's just amazing to see how you can change the baseline for environmental knowledge and activism in the Bahamas by a program that really, it was 10 students last year. We have another 10 students this year. Tanoya isn't tuned in right now because she's prepping for the panel discussion this afternoon with our new cohort of Bahamians, birds, and botany students. It's just, it's such an amazing opportunity to be able to see that with students. And it's something that Tanoya and I both wanted to be able to do something to inspire students. And one of the things that we did was we made it free for all the students.
I was going to say, if you didn't mention it, I was going to say, and it's free.
Yeah. And so definitely if you want to contribute to Bahamians, birds, and botany, maybe you want to bring it to your island, right? Because these were students that were in New Providence. Some of the students, we actually flew them in from other islands.
And so no, 11th to 12th graders, guys, this is
11th to 12th graders. And a lot of students coming out of 11th and 12th grade, you don't even know about like how to look for a job or if there's anything out that really inspires you. Mm-hmm. And now these students, like the passion that we see in them, you know, if we just get 2-3 of them a year, that's really good work. Yeah. But 10 students, there's a few things that have been really amazing for me to have done in my career, but this partnership with Tanoya is probably like right up there with establishing beings and starting the first coral nurseries in the Bahamas, right? And it's just so amazing to see. And the students, just like those coral nurseries, they're going to be growing and they're going to branch out and they're going to affect all sorts of things in the future.
That's powerful, very exciting, and I am so excited to meet Tanoya this afternoon. But I do have our last question that we'll wrap up the show with. After saying all of that, do you have some final words or thoughts to inspire our viewers to either get involved or to continue to try to pursue careers in this field?
I would like to impress upon everyone that I acknowledge myself that the work that I do is not for everyone. But the environment does affect all of you. And so anytime that you can learn even a small amount and, you know, go back through Siren Sundays and binge watch, it's the most amazing thing. And anytime I come on the show, I just like binge watch everything before. And then also like follow Science and Perspective and, you know, reach out to me. If you can spell my name, you can find me. I'm happy to, yeah. I'm happy to connect you with other scientists and other people working in the field, but take a class or two at UB. GIS, Introduction to GIS would be a good one when I'm teaching it. Definitely some intro to biology, intro to environmental science, and just learn a little bit more about your country and accept that knowledge. And we welcome you into our spaces.
Oh yes, I think environmentalists are always looking. Just come hug the trees with us. Come observe the coral. Like come and join our community. And thank you so much, Dr. Davis. I think you are in such a great position to make such great change. And if not you, then who? As I was telling you before, I think you have the passion and the knowledge, of course, but just like that fire in you to help create this change by empowering our youth with the information, the science, and the perspective that they need to then continue on and be that next Dr. Davis. You know, I'm so excited to see what's to come.
Most definitely. Thank you so much. It's love to come. It's awesome to come and splash around with you on Sundays. And thank you for inviting me back again. And I'm looking forward to season 10 coming up soon
I
with
know.
the awesome Lindy Knowles. Yeah.
Now you have to do it. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you to all my viewers for riding this wave with us on another episode of Siren Sundays. Hoping to see you next week. All waves yours, Lashanti the Siren.